Welcome to this new podcast series, Life as a Neurodivergent Student, a collaboration between Student Minds and All Things Mental Health. As part of Student Minds' Student Space Resources, this series explores the experiences of neurodivergent students in higher education. This series has been co-designed with neurodivergent students from across the UK. Each episode focuses on a different theme and features conversations with students sharing their experiences, reflections and insights. We're excited to bring this series to you and to open up new conversations that centre neurodivergent student voices. I'm Aniska Sohol, the founder and project manager of All Things Mental Health.
I'm Anna Bailey, the researcher in residence at All Things Mental Health. All Things Mental Health is a mental health podcast that focuses on young minds and students. We bridge the gap between research and lived experience by co-creating space for new dialogue to emerge. In this series, we're working with student minds to navigate neurodivergence in a world not always built with neurodivergent minds in mind. We partner with charities and universities to develop student or young people-centred content. Our partners include the University of Oxford and King's College London.
I'm Izzy, the Senior Programme Manager for Student Space at Student Minds. The Life as a Neurodivergent Student project focuses on shifting narratives around mental health and neurodivergence within higher education. Alongside Ashley, we have conducted steering groups with a brilliant team of neurodivergent students to explore what matters most to them regarding support, understanding and representation. Their insights have shaped the key themes of this podcast. Together, we are co-creating content that reflects real experiences and offers resources and strategies to help other neurodivergent students navigate university life. These resources and more support can be found on our Student Space website.
Hi, I'm Ashley, a consultant doctor who works in the NHS in London. I care specifically for children and young people with neurodivergent conditions, many of whom often have mental health difficulties like anxiety or other brain conditions like epilepsy. My clinical experience was helpful when understanding the experiences of our exceptional students in this focus group and to facilitate discussions so that we could create this marvellous podcast series.
Thanks everyone. Izzy, could you talk us through how the focus groups have informed the development of this podcast?
Of course. The groups created space for open and honest discussions about being neurodivergent in a university context. Students spoke about masking, discovering your neurodivergence, lack of support, resilience, creativity, and advocacy. We took those discussions and turned them into 6 key themes that underpin this podcast.
Each features neurodivergent students exploring central themes that emerge in Student Minds' workshops. This podcast explores the highs, lows, and in-betweens of navigating university as a neurodivergent student. Through honest conversations with students who have lived experience, each episode unpacks the unique challenges and strategies involved in studying, living and thriving at university while neurodivergent.
This introduction will be followed by an episode that reflects on living with or waiting for a neurodivergent diagnosis. Michael and Martha share the emotional complexities of being undiagnosed, the difficulties of adjusting to shared university accommodation, and the sensory overwhelm that can come with it. From building daily routines to recognising personal needs, this episode sets the scene for the journey this podcast series takes into self-discovery and student life. Izzy, please tell us more about the first theme, diagnosis, discovery and daily life.
So this theme appeared early on in those focus group discussions. Quite quickly, the group found many things they had in common, but also things that they didn't, and how that impacted their individual neurodivergent experiences. Take a diagnosis, for example. If you're living with a diagnosis, you may face the challenge of lecturers making assumptions about you. But in contrast, if you're waiting for a diagnosis, you may struggle to get the reasonable adjustments you need for your studies. So this theme will explore those practical and emotional challenges of living with or without a diagnosis, and even navigating misdiagnosis. The students will also talk more broadly about transitioning into daily life at university, including navigating shared housing and building their routine.
And Ashley, from your clinical perspective, how does the need to advocate for yourself appear in therapy or academic spaces?
This is such an important topic because for many university students, advocating for themselves may be a new experience, especially if their parents or carers were the ones handling things before. We know that neurodivergent traits are expressed across a spectrum, and each individual displays unique strengths and limitations. So professionals across healthcare, therapy, education, and research must really listen to students' self-advocacy of their unique experiences. Then only can we ensure that the correct reasonable adjustments are applied. And the really great thing is that the research tells us that when neurodivergent students speak up for themselves, it doesn't just help them, it often inspires, it often empowers others to do the same.
Moving on to mental health and neurodivergent identities, Izzy, what did students say about this area?
This was a really fascinating area of discussion because there are some obvious overlaps between symptoms of various mental health conditions and symptoms of various neurodivergent conditions. And also the fact that neurodivergent people may present differently when dealing with a mental health difficulty. The group spoke at length about how often healthcare providers and universities themselves can have interventions for both separately, but often not both together. And this can be really difficult as often students are told by one service, oh, this is a mental health thing, go to the mental health team. And then that service will come back with, oh no, this is an autism or an ADHD thing, go to the disability team. There's so much we could discuss on this topic, so I'm really excited to hear this episode.
And Ashley, how does the experience of seeking a diagnosis or disclosing neurodivergence shape student well-being?
So in my experience, and the research backs this up, getting a diagnosis of a neurodivergent condition, or even just going through the process and not getting one, can be a really validating experience. It helps people make sense of that feeling of being different. That said, everyone's journey is unique. Some people need more time to figure out what it means for their identity and whether they want to share about their neurodivergence. And that's totally okay. Their upbringing or family experiences inform a lot of their readiness, so we've got to respect where each person's at. With mental illnesses, we know their co-occurrence with neurodivergence is very high, so timely and accurate diagnosis of illnesses like depression is critical to the person getting the correct support and treatment.
This is so true and something I've seen a lot in my research, so thank you so much for sharing that. We also have the Neurodivergent Study Survival Guide. Izzy, how did this come through in the conversations?
This was a very fun conversation with the group, as I could just see light bulbs going off in people's brains non-stop. But essentially, being neurodivergent often requires adaptability and innovation. So for a personal example, I'm autistic, and when I was studying, I would hyperfixate on the topics I loved, giving minimal attention to the assignments on topics I wasn't so passionate about. So a technique I created to get around it is called the special interest sandwich. So spending 15 minutes on the topic I love, then 30 minutes on the one I don't, and then another 15 on the one I do. So using the momentum of your interest as a launch pad and giving your brain something to look forward to, kind of like a dopamine bribery. So this episode will be all about those techniques our students have discovered and how to study with your strengths instead of against them.
Ashley, in your practice, how have you seen university environments support or fail to support neurodivergent needs?
So I've heard from many students about how tough it can be, experiences like sensory overload in busy spaces, struggling with executive functioning because of inconsistent class schedules, and then just it being socially and emotionally exhausting when engaging in group work or oral presentations. The good news is that I'm hearing more and more that universities are starting to understand how to better support neurodivergent needs. We're seeing more examples of good practice, like swapping out timed exams in large exam halls for more flexible assessments, or giving access to lecture recordings and transcripts so students can learn in a way that actually suits their unique neurodivergent profile. The key thing is, if universities want to build truly inclusive environments, they've got to involve neurodivergent students in shaping them right from the start and making sure that staff are adequately trained to support neurodiverse needs.
And I think the next subject really speaks to that, and it's how to find balance as a neurodivergent student. So Izzy, why was this so important to include?
Our focus group quickly identified that burnout is common among them and can be a big issue in student communities. So this episode will include practical tips on preventing and coping with burnout, learning to prioritise your time, and setting boundaries with those around you.
And Ashley, how do you see strength-based approaches to neurodivergence shifting the conversation in higher education and beyond? This feeds in nicely to our final theme, beyond the classroom, placements, apprenticeships, and years abroad.
Yeah, I think that strengths-based approach will absolutely make an impact. Firstly, it moves the focus from a deficit to potential so that neurodivergent students are not passive participants requiring accommodation, but rather that they are empowered individuals who are capable contributors to university, to work lives. Secondly, it builds confidence and self-advocacy, which is exactly what higher education is meant to do. It's meant to help students grow and prepare for the real world. And let's not forget that the real world is already changing, so employers are actively seeking neurodiverse talent, especially in design, tech, problem solving, and innovation. And then finally, that strengths-based approach fosters a more inclusive culture, which arguably improves university and work environments for everyone.
Well, thanks so much, Ashley and Izzy. I can't believe we've got through so much in so little time. It's been amazing to hear both of your expertise and a little bit about what we're going to be exploring in this series. So each week we will launch a new episode led by the student team who have brought so much insight and care to this work.
This series really centres lived experience and co-creation, and we proudly present a podcast series by neurodivergent students who share their voices, stories and strategies. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of this episode and also the rest of the series.
Welcome to this new podcast series, Life as a Neurodivergent Student, a collaboration between Student Minds and all things mental health. This episode is on diagnosis, discovery and daily life. My name is Martha Davey.
And my name is Michael Lister. So Martha, I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your experience with having neurodivergence and maybe sharing a little bit about what it's like living with this and maybe waiting for your diagnosis.
Thank you, Michael. So I've got dyspraxia, and it was quite late in life that I discovered I had dyspraxia. I think I would have been in year 10, so I would have been 15, and it was just one of my mum's friends just was like, oh, do you think Martha's got dyspraxia? And my mum had no idea what that was. And then she told me that it was really casual, actually. She just was like, oh, I think you may have dyspraxia. And I was like, what is that? Because I only knew dyslexia. So I was like, what is this? And I wasn't that fast. I was like, okay, cool. And then it was during COVID, so it was quite awkward with the diagnosis. I was on a waiting list, and then I did online test, which was over Zoom. And so mum in advance, she printed out some worksheets for me, and it was doing activities. So some of it was tracing. I think I had a circle to cut out, and then it was seeing how well I could do it in the lines, and I didn't do very well. And then when the COVID restrictions relaxed a little bit, I went to a formal assessment centre and I did a range of different activities. It was quite a long time ago, but I'd say I was there for maybe a couple of hours, and I really enjoyed it. I remember I did fun activities. It was kind of like battleships, and I had to see how quickly I could turn the pins over. I did some kind of yoga activity. I did a little bit of tennis and catching, and I really enjoyed it. But I didn't get a formal diagnosis. They just said I had dyspraxic-like symptoms. It was in 2023, and I would have been 18, was when I actually got a formal diagnosis. It was really comforting to get a diagnosis because all my life there's been slight, not quite normal things I would do, and originally it just upset my self-esteem. I just saw myself as some of these traits as being bad traits, whereas now I just know, oh, it's part of my dyspraxia, and I wouldn't actually change having dyspraxia. I'm very, very proud to have dyspraxia. Okay, Michael, when did you realise that you were neurodivergent?
Yeah, it's a little bit different for myself. Like, I didn't know about neurodivergence and even anything about it until I went to uni. And then that's when I started just to discover I was a little bit different to my peers. I was a little bit different to my friends. And it wasn't until randomly a lecturer came up to me and was just like, Michael, I think you should maybe go and talk to our support team at uni and just see if there's anything that you need help with. And it wasn't until that I then went there and then started talking about the things that I do a little bit differently, that then they were like, oh, you have dyslexia and ADHD. Like, it wasn't until then that they were like, let's test you for these and see if, you know, you do meet the criteria for having that. And it was shocking, to be honest, because it was a bit like, oh, I just thought I was a little bit, you know, a bit spicy, a little bit different, a little bit, you know, what was my brain doing differently? And it was a big learning opportunity for me, because I was like, wow, I need to learn a lot about who I am, what makes me tick, what this label actually means as well. And I think having that diagnosis changed everything in a weird way, because having a label, very similar to what you said, Martha, I kind of liked it. It helped me to actually understand who I was a little bit more. It gave me a definition of why my brain was a little bit different. And it was helpful to make a lot of sense about these different things and how they were displayed in my life.
When you say that you felt different and you did things differently and what you'd call us spicier, can you give examples of that you've noticed isn't what a neurotypical person perhaps might not do?
Yeah, definitely. I think things that I did a bit different, that was a little bit more, as I said, spicier, was just as simple as getting a little bit more overwhelmed in certain situations. Maybe, I mean, it's very typical, you know, uni life to be clubbing and being around people frequently and, you know, having societies with so many people. And I really, really realised I was just getting a bit more overwhelmed, a little bit overworked, getting quite emotional in these areas. And it was that really made me realise, oh, like, it let me remove myself and started to reflect a little bit about who I was as a person and what I was doing a bit different. The dyslexia one was purely my reading as well. I was such a slow reader. I was a little bit more behind on my peers in academic work. My grades were kind of slipping a little bit. There was little things with the dyslexia that made me realise, maybe it is that, like, you know, the common one of spelling and stuff like that, right? Like, there's things like that just stood out to me. If I'm honest, it wasn't really me that recognised it. I generally just didn't think I had it. Didn't even know it really existed, really, until that lecturer told me, you know, maybe you should just have a look at it and see if it is.
Yes, it did. Thank you. What was it like getting diagnosed? What procedure did you go through? Did you enjoy it? Was it an anxious process? How did you find the whole diagnosis?
I think the diagnosis process isn't really spoken about a lot. It's kind of hidden, right? It's in the shadows. Not many people talk about it until you know, then we just get given a label and it's kind of like, okay, what? But my diagnosis process was a little bit weird. Similar to you, had to do these games and had to, you know, do jigsaws. I was doing drawings. I had to just talk a lot, realistically. They watched me make a cup of tea randomly. That was a massive standout point for me. It was very, very different and it was very interactive. Okay, Martha, you were saying previously that you liked the label that you was given. I'm curious, did you want to receive the label? Is it something that's helpful for you?
Yes. So going into the kind of assessment centre, I wasn't that anxious at all. I was really excited. I was anxious about the unknown as I wasn't sure what I'd be doing. But when I walked in, it was a really welcoming atmosphere and it was quite a fun process. At the end, they kind of talked me through the scores and they sent a report. And I looked at it through my mum and it said highly likely to have dyspraxia or dyspraxic-like symptoms were very high. I can't exactly remember the wording, but it was on the lines of that. And I remember being so happy, so happy. And I remember messaging my dad with just the words, I passed, with an exclamation mark. And he messaged back saying, what does that mean? Because a normal person would think I passed meant, yay, I don't have dyspraxia. I'm what people would call normal. But I was like, I passed, I've got dyspraxia. And that's because my whole life there's been parts of me that other peers, my friends, wouldn't relate to. And I felt upset about that. I felt quite self-conscious, especially in sport as a child. And it was just really reassuring to have an identity and have something that explains it. And I don't feel embarrassed at all having dyspraxia. Sometimes I get nervous to bring it up because I feel like people think I'm incompetent or they'll just judge me for it. And some people don't know what dyspraxia is. I don't give any shame on that because it's not very widely spoken about, but I do sometimes get anxious to say I have dyspraxia out of fear they won't know what it is, and I don't want to put them in an uncomfortable situation where they think, crikey, this girl has just said she's got something, but I don't know how to react because I don't actually know what it is. And so that's the only parts that I see as a negative. Michael, do you ever feel self-conscious telling someone that you're neurodivergent? Do you feel anxious about how they'll react or even if they'll judge you for it?
I think telling people that you're dyslexia and ADHD have quite big stigmas about them. And I think I had to discover it myself, what those actually mean. And I had to really discover what ADHD actually looks like for myself, but also for the people, my peers that have it as well. And I kind of went on a self-rediscovery path and kind of really just had to work out who this new Michael was with ADHD, right? And sure, I had lived with it for, I think it was about, 19 years of my life. But I now had a label that I had to really work out. And I did get a little bit scared telling people because I was a bit like, oh, it doesn't mean that I get angry all the time. And it doesn't mean that I get really frustrated and, violent that some people attach ADHD to. But it did mean that I had to find the language to use to describe it to people. And I think that's the process that I'm still going on at the moment, right? And it did get a little bit scary trying to tell people, but I think that was the importance of me finding a community of people that had it as well, that had the same label as ADHD. Finding them helped me so much to discover the best ways to talk about it, the best ways to access support, and the best ways to talk in general about ADHD. It's given me a lot of confidence and power to own my diagnosis, and that pathway of discovery has really helped me.
How did you? Because I haven't really found a community for dyspraxia or even just neurodivergent. How have you found your community?
I found my community through uni, if I'm honest. I went and joined a society. There was a society for neurodivergent students. And I really kind of embedded myself there and just spoke to people. I think also neurodivergency is a label that a lot of people have. And I think it's one that you have to talk to people and kind of work out if they have it as well. I think neurodivergent people can pick up on signs that another person's neurodivergent and find community within that. And there's more and more people that I talk to, a lot more of my peers that I speak to. And I'm like, oh, are you a little bit spicy as well, basically? Do you have a neurodivergency as well? And it's those moments where community can get built within your own community. And you really can find people that has the diagnosis as well. So Martha, how has dyspraxia impacted your life?
It affected me, especially as a child in my developing phase. I really struggled to learn how to talk, and I had a stammer at the age of 3. My mum found it quite distressing watching me try to speak. It was quite a challenging process, my mum. But I didn't actually care. I never seemed fazed by it. And I used to get speech therapy for it, but government cut the funding. And so my speech to this day isn't quite the best. There's still some words that I can't pronounce. And I've found it quite noticeable at university. I study at the University of Bath, and the students at the University of Bath, a lot of them have come from middle class backgrounds, and a lot of their speech is at quite a high level compared to mine. And so I've struggled at university as I do feel like I stick out. Most people at the Bath will have the Queen's English. They'll be able to pronounce words adequately and with confidence. Another way is sensory issues. It's interesting because neurodivergent people, the majority of us will struggle with sensory issues. I find it fascinating how we all struggle in different ways, because you were saying, Michael, about clubbing, whereas I don't really enjoy clubbing that much, but it's not for sensory reasons why. I've struggled all my life with clothing, with textures. I'm quite a tactile person, and it was really bad when I was around the age of 10. I would only wear big baggy jogging bottoms and an oversized t-shirt or a dress. I would never wear leggings. I would never wear tights. I'd have to wear a brand new pair of socks each day. I couldn't wear them if they'd been washed. And now I've got a lot better, but there are certain materials I will not wear, or really constrictive clothing. It was only I think 2 years ago that I can now wear a long sleeve t-shirt. Truth is, I've got no idea how it's got better. I don't know if it's to do with puberty and growing up, or it just took some time. Eating, I used to be a really picky eater and quite a sensitive eater, so I don't like cucumber, and I would have tantrums when I was younger. I could smell, it's my superpower. I could smell cucumber anywhere. If it's near me, I can smell it. And then that was really challenging because everyone just thought I was being dramatic. But that's how I felt. One thing I found really hard about being neurodivergent is it's in your head. It's an emotional feeling or a physical feeling, but it's not an observant feeling. So after I do an exam, my wrist will be really hurting because of where I hold the pen isn't like a normal person. My joints don't work like that. But everyone else will come out of the exam and say, oh, my wrist really hurts. And I'm like, do I have something wrong with me? Because I can't measure my pain to their pain. And then for the fireworks, I really hate the fireworks and I really hate loud slamming doors. But no one likes loud slamming doors. And so that's one thing I've really struggled with. And same with sensory issues. I would struggle if I had to wear a thick, itchy pair of tights. It would cause me to have a meltdown in my brain. And I would try my best to try and fight the feeling of just wanting to rip it off me. But then surely everyone has that. And so that's the hardest part of dyspraxia, is not knowing if everyone struggles to some level and I struggle to more of a level, or if we all feel the exact same. And there's no real way to actually know because it's all inside our heads.
It's a powerful diagnosis, right? It's one that impacts you in so many ways, but are so difficult to measure. And I think that's also the difficulty of the diagnosis and discovery process that so many people go through, right? Is you're kind of having to prove something to a professional that you can't just show them. You can't just show, here's a bruise on my arm, but you have to prove to them that, oh, I do have this, but I can't just show you a piece of paper. The one tip I can give people is just write stuff down. That's what I did when someone said to me, you're going to go through a diagnosis for ADHD. I just started writing down what I think ADHD traits were. And then I showed that to them and said, this is what appears in my daily life. It may not appear today, but this is what's appeared the past month. Because I don't know if it's the same for you, Martha. What my ADHD self can be today will be completely different tomorrow. And I don't know if it's the same with dyspraxia in terms of what you display today could be completely different to how you display tomorrow at university. But no, I agree with what you're saying, Martha. It's quite difficult to go through the process of diagnosis when it is quite literally an invisible trait that you're living with.
No, I really agree with what you just said, Michael. The diagnosis, when you get tested, it's 1 hour or a 2 hour snippet of your whole entire life. And so when I was asked to cut out shapes, I was thinking, okay, because right now, if you've really told me you've got to cut out shapes, it would take me longer than most people, but I could probably do it. Whereas as an everyday task, if I was at work and I got told, oh, Martha, please, can you cut out some worksheets? Could you cut out these images? I'd go, okay, 4 copies, please, as I'll probably mess up the first few. And especially when you got asked to make a cup of tea, like everyday life, you might make an absolute awful cup of tea. But if you're just told, we're watching you, we've got clipboards, we're assessing you, make a cup of tea, please, Michael, you're going to do the best cup of tea you've ever done in your life. And so it's really challenging of how to assess something that's not like a broken elbow, for an example. Michael, how have you found being neurodivergent at university? How has it affected your day-to-day life, both academic and socially?
Yeah, so it's affected my academic side quite a lot in terms of I'm notorious for always getting extensions because I am an A-class procrastinator. I will procrastinate until the day is dawn, essentially. I am so dreadful at time organisation and just organisation in general. And it really, really affects that part of uni. I have numerous skills now that I have learnt from the community that I was talking about previously, such as even just writing it down on a post-it note and just sticking it on the door. Just make sure every single time I leave, I'm reminded I do have that. During my undergrad, I had a member of the university staff who I met with once a week who was able to sit down with me and plan what my week looked like, with what academic assignments I had coming up, what events were coming up in my life. And we literally made my timetable, that session, of what that week was going to look like. which I guess anyone can do, really. You can sit down with any of your friends and kind of work out what your week's going to look like. It affected my social life quite a lot. There was ways that I had to navigate differently than my atypical peers and friends. Always just reflect in myself a little bit and think, is this going to be an event where I'm overstimulated or overwhelmed in? Is this going to be an event where I can be my best self? Or do I need to ask for reasonable adjustments in certain events in the social world? You know, like, do I need to say, is there going to be a quiet room I can step into if I feel a little bit overwhelmed? And there was other ways that it appeared. As I was saying, in nightclubs were always the worst. I always had to just make sure I leave a little bit earlier than everyone else. With my neurodivergency, I found ways to still have fun at uni. I found a community of people where we're more than happy just to sit around in a house and watch a movie and just chat and have fun that way. There was ways that I could still have fun at uni with my neurodivergency. But how about you, Martha?
My experience hasn't been that different compared to my peers, I would say. The only time I really notice is my sense of direction and also following directions. I really struggled at the beginning of campus finding my lecture rooms and just even finding my accommodation. Luckily, I chose my accommodation on this heart of campus. It's the centre of campus, and that helped me. But I just had no sense of direction. And it was even because I've been at the university for nearly a year now. And it was the other day, I was walking into town from the university with someone that's not from the university. And I had no idea where I was going because normally I just walk with my friends and they guide me. And it's the exact same route as the bus route, and I still had no idea. And to that, I'm going on placement year in my third year, and I'm currently in my first year. And that's something that's making me feel a little bit anxious because it will be somewhere in the UK, most likely London. And because of my sense of direction, that would definitely disadvantage me, especially with limiting my options, as I'm not sure if London is the right place for me, especially I feel very safe in Bath and I feel safe that I can walk around with my phone with Google Maps, just looking like aimlessly. Whereas if I was doing that in London, I would be much more in a vulnerable situation. Secondly, at university was the sensory issues. I was very anxious for sharing a kitchen. The whole of the summer before university, I was kind of dreading it. I was going back and forth saying, I should have got a studio. No, Martha, it's uni lifestyle. You've got to do it. Oh, I should have got a studio. Just because of a different sense and then people in my way. Because at home, it's just me and my mum at home. I really struggle if my mum comes in the kitchen when I'm in the kitchen. I can't put my finger on why it actually is, if it's my time and she's interrupting it, or if it's just the sensory issues of having too much going on. And so both me and my mum were quite concerned about how I'd cope at university with 10 other people in the kitchen at the same time. But it's not the best advice to give, but it really helped me speaking to myself and saying, look, Martha, this isn't your home. This is university and it is meant to be messy. It's meant to be chaotic and you will be okay. I know that that's not advice I can give to all neurodivergent people, and I'm quite lucky to have that actually work because I walk into the kitchen at university and it is an absolute mess. The kitchen surfaces are horrible and there's so many different smells from all the different people that have cooked. But I just think, okay, it's okay. This is meant to be here. This is not my home. This is what it's like at university. And it hasn't actually, it's really weird. I would never believe how okay I am now. And it's actually now helped me going at home. I told my mum I was going to cook, and mum was like, oh, okay, I'll leave the kitchen at Christmas time. And I was like, no, mum, no, you can stay. You can stay. I want you to stay. And it's so weird how my brain has kind of changed. One other way it's impacted my university experience having dyspraxia is probably the sports. It's the only time that I actually don't like having dyspraxia. Most of the time, I either feel empowered by it or not bothered at all having it. I wouldn't even notice I had it. But when it comes to sport, that's when I notice I have it because of my coordination not being the best. And it really upsets me seeing people, just the community of sport is so strong and it seems so much fun. But my lack of confidence, and also I don't even know if it's confidence, I think it's being realistic. I wish I didn't have dyspraxia so that I could participate in sport because of the community aspect of it. But then Now actually thinking about this, and actually I've never really speak about it, and this podcast has helped me because I regret not advocating for myself, and I feel like I should just go to these sports beginner tasters in September and say, hey, my name's Martha, I have dyspraxia, I'm really sorry. Not even apologise, to say, look, I won't be the best at catching the ball, but I'm going to give it my best chance. And then that will also spread awareness. I need to be more confident and not be ashamed of having dyspraxia.
So Martha, to wrap up this podcast, how about we come up with what our final message, our final thoughts for the listeners?
My final thought that I'd want the listener to be reminded of is just to be confident in who you are. Being neurodivergent is not a negative trait to have, and it's something that you should be proud of. And so I wish my past self and even my present self wouldn't feel so uneasy when I tell people, oh, I've got dyspraxia, and I'd like, it's the tone of your voice. I wish I just go, oh yeah, I've got dyspraxia, this affects this, but it also means I can do this.
It's just owning it and being powerful of who you are. You know, the diagnosis and the discovery process can be quite daunting, but yeah, just own it. It is who you are.